watch for your emotional state, right? Like, I think that overwhelm, in fact, I just wrote an article about this. I think that overwhelm, I even said, is a red flag God throws out to get our attention sometimes. If you just are feeling overwhelmed or hopeless, or maybe experiencing symptoms of depression is really common in caregivers. If you are having anger that is long lasting, I mean, anger is a normal emotion, but if you're finding that you're not processing it how you normally would, that you're struggling to put it down, those might be indications. Maybe you need to talk to somebody. I talk about my book, I have a chapter that caregivers are kingdom workers. They are kingdom workers, and what you're doing has eternal impact. I mean, you are taking care of a life that the Lord has entrusted you with.
Welcome to Her Desired Haven Podcast, a community where we come together to discuss all things Jesus, family life, and faith. I am your host, LaShondra. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today we have another guest. Today's guest is a caregiver advocate who leads others through the challenges of caregiving with grace and faith. In today's episode, she's going to share how her personal journey has shaped her understanding of caregiving as both hard and holy work. She discusses practical ways to navigate the emotional and spiritual challenges caregivers face and offers insights on how to maintain one's identity and well-being while caring for others. Please welcome Amy Chastain to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. Can you share what led you personally to become a caregiver?
Well, it kind of snuck up on me, to be perfectly honest. I actually have a background as a registered nurse, and I worked in the field very briefly before getting remarried, gaining a child. So I had 4 total at that point. So I stepped out to take care of my family. And as my young family grew, our parents also were aging. And I think what kind of kicked it off, my father-in-law had Alzheimer's disease. And so that went from, he probably had symptoms when we first got married, but they were very mild, to, we kind of saw it progressing and getting to the point where, for instance, he could no longer calculate the tip on a restaurant receipt, things like that. And then, it just progressively became more difficult. And eventually, my in-laws ended up moving to Atlanta near us so that we could be there to provide more care. So, that's kind of what started it. After he had Alzheimer's, my mother-in-law suffered a massive stroke. And so we walked through that journey with her. And as we entered into the COVID season, my previously healthy son became quite ill, and we were in and out of the hospital, and no one could really tell us what was wrong. On top of which, I was helping with my elderly grandmother who was losing her sight and having mobility issues. So we just kind of walked through. We were like a little bit of everything at my house.
Yeah, I see. Oh my goodness, to experience all of that all back to back had to be really, really hard. What helped you encourage? What helped you keep your faith through that whole process and journey?
Well, what helped is having community around me. I will say that, from here, I can say that the Lord really used that time to strengthen my faith. But when I was in it, I didn't see it that way. Yeah. I was crying out, especially with my son. You'd never want parents to age or have battle infirmity or not have good quality of life, but they're your parents, and we understand that our bodies age and get older. And I really struggled with a child having these health issues that we couldn't fix. We didn't even understand what they were. And so I really wrestled with my faith during that season. And I'm just so thankful that my church family and, my ladies' Bible study group and all these people that I could just be honest with and just say hey, they'd ask me, how's your son? And I'm like, what? It's been a horrible week. We're just not having a good time over here. And it was really important to be able to have those friendships and that Christian fellowship where I didn't feel like I was going to be judged for having the bad time or not having the good attitude. But at the same time, they would redirect me and remind me that God was there and that, he had his hand on us even when we didn't feel like he did.
That's really good. I think community is so important, especially godly community. And I love the fact that you were able to just be honest about how you felt. You know how sometimes you can show up in community, but it's like you have a mask on and they ask you, "Hey, how are you doing?" And you're like, "Oh, everything's great."
You go like, "I'm fine."
But I love that you have a community where you could just be honest about how you feel and they still love you unconditionally. They're there to encourage you, to support you. And I think everyone needs that. That's such a blessing to have.
It is. And I've just been just so fortunate with that. But I had to tease my husband one day. We were in church and he was looking at the church bulletin on the prayer request list. And he looks at me, he goes, "Hey, we got off the prayer request list." And he's like high-fiving me. And then like that very afternoon, another relative was in an ambulance. I said, "Don't you ever high-five me being off the prayer list again."
Right. We need all the prayers we can get.
I said, "You just let them keep praying.
Stop,
Don't float."
That's beautiful. I love that. So I saw you mention something about the sandwich generation. Can you share with our community, what exactly does that mean?
Absolutely. So people are considered in that sandwich generation, or in that space of the sandwich generation, when they are both raising their own family, their own children, and taking care of older relatives, most often parents. It doesn't necessarily mean you have young kids, although you might. It could just be that you still have teenagers. They're in high school. You're doing the sports games and the music lessons and all the things. And caregiving is an extra responsibility. I mean, it just is. And when you add that on top of a normally really busy season in life, it just can become extra challenging to navigate both the logistics and I found myself struggling to meet everybody's emotional needs. Because when you have to divert your time and attention from where it typically would be, that person who typically has your time and attention can, they experience that as a loss. And so it can be challenging.
It is. And I can definitely relate to that as well. Being a single mother, 3 kids, and then out of nowhere having to also care for an ill family member. And I just remember it just being so difficult. I was so overwhelmed. I was so frustrated. When it first initially happened, it was a hard adjustment. Do you have any advice or wisdom you can share with maybe a mother who's listening? She's currently in a caregiver season. Maybe she's a single mother and this is new to her. She doesn't know where to turn, where to get help from. What is your word of advice for her?
Yeah. And I would, especially my heart goes out. I've been in the space of being a single mom. I'm not now, but I've walked through it and it's, that's a hard road. I would say just please give yourself some grace. Try to see yourself through the eyes of the Lord who loves you so, so much. I think especially as women, we tend to be really hard on ourselves and we hold ourselves to this unrealistic, silly standard that we wouldn't hold anyone else to. If I was looking at my friend trying to juggle all these responsibilities and she's like, "I can't do it," I'd be like, "Of course you can't." But when it's us, we tend to just think we should be able, if I just work harder, if I just sleep less, if I get more organized, if I pray harder, but that's a losing battle. So I would say first, please give yourself some grace and just give yourself space to breathe and know that you're doing the best that you can. I would also say, please reach out for help. Ask for it. Again, one of those things, I'm quick to offer help. I hate to raise my hand and say, "Hey, over here, come help me." But really, I had a friend of mine at church. I had offered an elderly gentleman. I had offered to help him with something. And he kept saying, "Oh, no, I'm fine. And finally, he's like, "You know what? I really shouldn't have said that because you are sitting here trying to minister to me. And I am like denying you something that, you are trying to pour into me." And he's like, "And I'm just being silly about that." So there's usually, and again, everyone's situation is different. I want to be sensitive to that. There are people walking through caregiving who really probably don't have the best friend or the neighbor or someone to call on. There are people who really, really are struggling. But for most of us, there's someone that we can ask. And And the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, I can't do that right now, but please raise your hand and ask for help. And if you don't have that person, reach out to your local church. Find a caregiver support group. There's lots of things and there's lots of ways to get support, but they're not always obvious and right in front of our faces. We have to look for them.
Right. What are some maybe red flags that might exist to a person who's a caregiver to recognize if they're becoming burnt out from their work? Like, what are some red flags they should pay attention to?
So I would really watch for your emotional state, right? Like, I think that overwhelm, in fact, I just wrote an article about this. I think that overwhelm, I even said, is a red flag God throws out to get our attention sometimes. If you just are feeling overwhelmed or hopeless, or maybe experiencing symptoms of depression is really common in caregivers. If you are having anger that is long lasting, I mean, anger is a normal emotion, but if you're finding that you're not processing it how you normally would, that you're struggling to put it down, those might be indications. Maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe I would always advise, if someone has the ability, the availability to seek counseling. It's so good to just have that person to talk to, and they can really help you navigate through some of life's hard times. Oftentimes with the anger, and I would say to watch for this, and I don't think it applies broadly, but there are those situations where people get in that angry space, and they get angry with the care recipient. And sometimes our loved ones are hard to love. We love them, but sometimes those relationships are challenging, especially if it was a challenged or difficult relationship before whatever brought them to needing care. So if your dad, for instance, has been an angry, grumbling alcoholic his entire adult life, he's not likely to just become, Pollyanna because he had a stroke. You're likely to still have all of those things you had before, plus he's likely angry with his change in circumstance. So if you find yourself in any kind of situation that you feel like is either you are receiving abuse from your care recipient, that's for sure a red flag to get some help, get some professional help in there. Or if you are feeling so angry that you are starting to have thoughts about lashing out or things like that, I would absolutely say, tell people, I need help. There are people around to step in. So I would never want someone to get themselves so far down the path that they find themselves in that situation.
Right. You have well over 15 years of experience as a caregiver. Are there any tips or facts that you think every caregiver should know beforehand?
Well, everyone's journey is different. I will say that there are some things. Well, first, let me say this. Caregiving is really hard, but it's also really, really important. And I think caregivers often feel unseen or inconsequential. And even if society at large is not seeing you guys, what you're doing is just so incredibly important. It is, I talk about my book. I have a chapter that caregivers are kingdom workers. They are kingdom workers. And what you're doing has eternal impact. I mean, you are taking care of a life that the Lord has entrusted you with to help. And that doesn't mean it's always easy, because it's not. It doesn't mean it won't be messy, because it will be. But that's just really important. So I would start there, and I'd say self-care. Caregivers are so guilty of this. We put ourselves off. We don't have time. We're trying to meet the emotional needs and physical needs of everyone else around us. So we put off the doctor's appointment, or we push off the dentist appointment. We don't go get the mammogram, and it's easy because that's not stuff we love to do. So we're just like, oh, I'll do that later. I'm going to do that later. But if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't take care of both your physical body, your physical health, and your spiritual and emotional health, you're going to run empty, and that's not helping anyone. So I would just really advocate for self-care. And I would say that that's going to look different for everyone. Maybe some people can't afford to go splurge and they have a Saturday off and can go get a massage and facial, and that's great. Some of us might just need 5 minutes listening to our favorite song while we sit in the car and don't go into the house yet because we need 5 minutes without people needing things from us. And that's self-care too. That's okay.
Yeah, that's really good. I think self-care is extremely important. But it's funny how we are caregivers. We get to the point where we're not even caring for ourselves. And like you said, eventually you're going to burn out and you're not going to be good to anyone at that point. You know what I mean? And you're going to need someone to help you. So it's so important to prioritize yourself, because if you are not pouring into yourself, if you are not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone.
That's very true. I've talked about how it's like the flight attendants give you the speech about put your own oxygen mask on first. Yeah. And we understand that, right? Like we can say, oh, well, if you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help the person next to you. This is the same thing. It's just less obvious. It's not going to happen as dramatically and quickly.
Right.
But, 1 in 5 Americans right now this year is a caregiver, or 1 in 5 adults. And it's just so huge. It's such a huge cross section of society. This is something that touches everyone, no matter where you live, what race you are. This just is across society. And at the same time, even though it's such a huge issue, culturally, we don't talk about this very much. I think it's one of those things that we just, it's scary. It's scary to think that it's coming towards us and we're going to have to be a caregiver, or it's scary to think something could happen to us as we age and we might need a caregiver. And so we kind of, just turn away from it. We just kind of shy away from it and we don't want to think about it. But I believe that, the Lord has just wired us to be in community. And I think that we really can support one another and we can make a big difference in the lives of caregivers if we do that.
You mentioned a little bit about it being holy work, and you are a Christian, you're a woman of faith, you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and you're also a ministry leader. So how has being a caregiver impacted your faith and your journey with God?
Well, it's like I said before, as I was walking through that really difficult season, I felt very challenged and I was angry with God. And why are you letting my son suffer? What did he do to deserve this? Which intellectually I know is not, but to be real honest about my feelings, that's where I was. But the Lord is so good that he does not turn away from us when we're frustrated and angry, much like we might have to, if we've got, a 2 or 3 year old having a complete meltdown, we still love them. We're going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to circle back to when you can be calm, right? But the Lord never walks away from us. He gives us the space that we need, but he's never far away. So I walked through that part of it, and having to struggle through that and having to question, really, really did strengthen my faith. And I will say that having to do the actual caregiving, the being there in those hard moments, the time when I saw my mother-in-law have a seizure, watching my father-in-law when he didn't remember his son, my husband, those are hard. They're hard, but it also, I was also blessed we were with my father-in-law when he passed. And those moments at the bedside, that's holy ground. It just is. And, I will forever be thankful that during that hard time, I was able to be there. Because and I would just say this, if you're having that moment where you're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I'm tired of being in the hospital overnight. I've been there. But stop and think, what if there was something that prevented me from being here? What if I couldn't be here? And I'm willing to wager that almost all of us would say, oh no, I wouldn't not be here.
Right.
Like I wouldn't be somewhere else while my husband, my mom, my child is walking through this. Of course I want to be with them. So it puts a very personal face on a subject that's so huge. And because I walked through it in very different ways with different members of my family, it really shines a light that everybody's experience is unique. And, but God's there. God is there in all of it. And I would just encourage your listeners that if they're in the middle of that struggle, it's normal. What you're feeling, this overwhelm and exhaustion, it's normal. It's not fair, but we live in a broken world. We're between the now and the not yet. And so we were never told that as followers of Jesus that we won't struggle. That's not what we're told. So we will, but take heart. He has overcome. I would hope that I could use my experience saying how it was such a challenge for me. And that just felt even worse. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough this, not good enough that. And then I felt like, oh, now I'm not a good enough Christian because I'm doubting or I'm struggling with these feelings. And that was just disheartening to me in the moment. So I would just say, like, understand that these feelings, they're normal. And that more importantly, your feelings are not too big for God. He can handle it. He's not going to run away from you. He has you safely in his arms, even when you don't feel like it, even when things feel the most frightening, the most uncertain, he's there. And being able to go back for me when I was just really, really struggling with that downward spiral of feeling like I couldn't do it all. I couldn't heal him. I wasn't good enough. I kind of had this nudge. It wasn't like, hey, Amy, spoke down to me, but this nudge of go back to my word. What does my word say? Mm-hmm. And so I went back into scripture. Well, what does he say about me? So I believe that what the Lord says, just what does he say about me? And that's where I started. I was just feeling so down, but I was pointed back to his word, which says, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. You are a child of God. You are an heir in Jesus Christ. And so that was an anchor for me. So I'd say find a verse and hold on.
That is really good. I feel like even through our struggles, like he uses that to bring us closer to him. It sounds crazy, when we're in it, we don't understand. And we're like, God, where are you? Like, what is going on? It gets crazy sometimes. But even in those times, like, he's there and he's going to use that to bring you and draw you closer and closer and closer to him. It's up to us, though, to continue to pursue him and not, go the other way and get upset and angry with God, but to just continue to seek his face through in the midst of the darkness and the pain that we're experiencing.
Yeah. If you are in this space and you feel like you have kind of tried to run away, it is never too late. Stop running, turn around and just say, I'm ready. Come back. Like, draw me closer. Like it's okay. But it can be a challenging season, but the power of God is just so amazing. I have my daughter who was very young when my father-in-law was diagnosed, and he eventually had to go into memory care. And we would say our prayers at night, and she called him Jampa, and she would pray for Jampa to get better and to come home. And I was walking that fine line as a mom of, okay, he has Alzheimer's. He's not going to get better. This is a terminal disease. And so I was trying to kind of direct her, right, to like pray for comfort and pray for, to be realistic in your prayers. Well, once my mother-in-law had her stroke, she also required around the clock care. And we ended up bringing him back to the home and having 24/7 care in the home. And my daughter was like, see, I prayed and Jampa got to come home. And I thought, wow, the faith of a child. How dare I tell her not to pray boldly, right? Yeah. Like it wasn't how we envisioned it. It wasn't exactly, he obviously was not cured from his Alzheimer's, but he came home and we got that time with him. And faith is strong. Faith is strong and prayer is amazing.
It is. Oh, that's so beautiful. Like the faith of children. It's just like in the innocence. And sometimes we as adults, we can put our limits on them and our intellect and stuff like that. We're like, oh, maybe you should just do this. But it's like, no, God wants us to have that childlike faith. And that's such a perfect illustration of that.
Yeah, it was eye-opening for me. I'm like, really, how dare I?
Yeah.
But, again, that goes back to us. It was trying to temper her expectations. I haven't seen anyone survive Alzheimer's yet. And so I was just, trying to kind of caution her but nope, she prayed with the bold faith of a child. And I think that was a good lesson that I needed to learn.
That's really good. So you wrote a book about caregiving. Can you share a little bit more about your book with our community?
Sure. So my book is called Enduring Together, Strength for the Weary Caregiver. And I kind of walk through the book of Ruth throughout the book, using it as an example. We don't really think of Ruth and think about caregiving, but with that first decision, when Ruth decided to journey with Naomi, to go back with her, to go back home, that was the first decision. And I think that as caregivers, that's the first thing we do, right? Like we have to step up and decide that we're going to do it. And so I kind of walk through that, and I walk through a lot of the lies that caregivers believe. For instance, that feeling like you're not valuable, the feeling like if I'm not appreciated, I can't keep doing this. Just some of these things where we get really worn down and we tend to just hear these thoughts in our head that are not true. They're not God-given, these thoughts about like, I'm not good enough and I can't do this. And I'm not qualified. That's one of my favorite, right? I'm not qualified for this. Don't ask me to do this. But really, I point readers back to the Word of God and to what He says, and to help them, navigate what is a really hard time. But I share personal stories, and I protected privacy, but I share stories from caregivers that I've interviewed because I want them to understand, these are real stories, right? Like caregiving can be messy and isolating. And so, if someone picks up my book and they start reading it and they're like, oh my gosh, she gets me, or they read a caregiver story and go, oh, that happened to me, or I could I just want them to feel that connection of knowing that they're not walking this road alone.
Where else can our community learn more about you or possibly purchase your book?
So the book is available online where books are sold. It's at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all that good stuff. I have a website. It's amychastain.com. And if you hop over there, I actually have a free resource, the Caregiver's Toolkit. So you can get a family prayer guide, and I have a document put together for if you love a caregiver, practical ways you can help the caregiver in your life. And I also have medication administration forms and medical ID forms and all that good stuff to hopefully make your life a little easier, because who needs one more thing to write down, put together.
Yeah.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Amy Chastain, author.
Perfect. And I'll include all your details. Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show. Did you have any last words you want to share with our community?
I would just like to say thank you to all of those of you out there who are involved in this, whether you are caring for a special needs child or taking care of an aging parent, or even just dealing with, your spouse had surgery and is trying to recover. Caregiving can be disruptive, but you're doing the Lord's work right now. And if you find yourself kind of having a hard day, stop and think, would I do this for Jesus? Because I bet that you would. And just thank you for what you do. You're making the world better for all of us.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amy, once again. And to our lovely community, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Please share this with a caregiver that you know so that they can be encouraged and uplifted as they go on their caregiver journey. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.